It is me, Patrick Coyle, the writer and creator of Bixby Grant Private Eye, here for your director's commentary, for lack of a better term. I'm not the director, I am the writer. I am a collaborator on this with a bunch of other talented folks that we'll get to in a minute. But what we're going to do here today is I'm going to step through the comic Bixby Grant Private Eye, Fangs and Brimstone #4, and kind of tell you some thoughts behind what went into it, what I like about it, what I don't like about it. And this is my first time ever doing this. So have some patience with me, please. But all right, let's get into it though. Let's talk about covers. So here we're looking at Gonzalo's main cover, Gonzalo Martinez, who is our interior artist, along with Arthur Hesley, who does the colors. They've worked on all the issues of Bixby Grant so far, and I think we've gelled into a really nice cohesive team. This is my favorite cover so far in the series. I've loved obviously all of them. I wouldn't put them out if I didn't. But there's a lot going on here, and I feel like we're finally getting some real action on the cover. Whereas we've hinted at it before, now some stuff is going down. We've got a big fight, lots of monsters. Diego's in trouble. Bix is in trouble. He's in chains. We've got a golem. We've got a demon. We've got a merman. We've got a werewolf. All kinds of fun stuff. If you haven't yet, I have a story in the process edition, which is a separate PDF reward for this Kickstarter, where I talk about the whole flow and how we came to this final piece here. There's quite a few interesting steps. So if you want more information about that, go check out the process PDF, okay? But I absolutely love this piece, and I'm thinking about printing it out and hanging it in my office. What do you think of that? But let's talk about Declan Shalvey and Elsa Charretier. Now, they are two of my favorite working artists. And I'm not just saying that because they did covers for me. I sought them out to do covers for Bixby Grant because I really wanted them to do so. Um, Declan Shalvey, if you're not familiar, he's done a ton of stuff for Marvel. He first came to prominence, at least in my mind, doing Moon Knight with Warren Ellis back in the teens, about 10 years ago, maybe, which was a phenomenal short run, about 6 issues or so. And then he's been doing some creator-owned stuff, like called Old Dog. He wrote an Alien series for Marvel. He's just been doing a ton of great stuff, and he's super talented. And so I thought he just kicked butt with this cover. Look at this. It's nice and graphic, which is kind of his style. He likes to do funky layouts. I love the giant Diego in the background. I love the color palette. I love the motion on Bix. The whole thing is just fantastic. And then we've got Elsa over here, who is one of my favorite working cartoonists. She lives and works in France. She first came to my attention, I think, a number of years ago. If any of you listen to David Harper's Sketched, or subscribe to his Sketched website, or listen to his off-panel podcast, I first heard an interview with her with David many, many years ago, and her work sounded really interesting, so I sought her out. I found her on Instagram. I found out she had done a bunch of work on Star Wars, um, some licensed work there. I followed her on Instagram, and she just posted a whole bunch of really great stuff. She also did a series of graphic novels called November with Matt Fraction, and then she did Love Everlasting with Tom King, I believe, a couple years ago. And she's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Works in a very, what I would say, European way, very different from the storytelling and style of what we get here in the States. And it's very graphical, a lot of line work, brush strokes, and I just love it. And I think she knocked it out of the park. One of my favorite little tidbits is this in the top left corner of Bix walking away is the hint of the lampposts and the windows of possibly a cathedral or something else behind him. I just love those little tidbits, plus the stones on the ground, the path that he's walking on. Just fantastic. I encourage each and every one of you to seek her out on your socials and just look at her stuff. All right, so why am I super psyched about this issue? Here we are. On the credits page, I always give a little recap, which I think is lacking in a lot of comics these days, just to get people up to speed. You never know when it's going to be somebody's first comic. So We are at issue 4 of a 6-issue series, which means we're at the second half of the second act, if you break it down into a basic 3-act structure, right? So issue 1 and 2, first act, issue 3 and 4 is the second act, and the back half of that second act is usually when stuff starts to go a little south, right? So the end of last issue, Bix and Diego got kidnapped and brought to some dark warehouse, and that's where we left off. For those of you who don't remember, the overall mystery is that someone in Harbor City is murdering people on the mayor's reelection committee. And the mayor is running on a platform of getting all the monsters out of Harbor City. And so immediately, all the monsters, including Bix and Diego, have become suspects. So Bix, and then reluctantly with Diego's help, has been chasing down some leads. And after he threw a cat burglar off a roof, and then also got his mind poked by a 9-year-old witch, they got kidnapped and then brought to this warehouse. So that's where we're picking up. And we're going to start getting some answers here. We're going to get some action, which is exciting. But things are going to go bad. So I've been looking forward to this issue, and I'm glad to be able to talk to you guys about it. Real quick before we get into the meat of it, I am the writer. I also do the lettering. Gonzalo Martinez is, of course, the interior line artist. Arthur Hesley does the colors. Gonzalo Ruggieri is the artist on the backup Zombie Town, which we're also going to talk about today. And then Heather Antos, of course, is our wonderful editor. If you don't know Heather, she is a superstar. She used to work at Marvel. She's currently the editor at a senior editor at IDW. She works on Star Trek and several other series over there. She has won an Eisner and a GLAD and a Ringo, maybe a bunch of other stuff that I should know off the top of my head. Can't remember, but she's phenomenal and helps me make this book be much better than I think I would be able to do on my own. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. Page 1, as I mentioned, we were kidnapped, and now we're in that warehouse, and we haven't yet found out who everybody is, right? But this page, I was using a lot of the captions here that run down the left-hand side to kind of catch everybody up. And it was a lot. Like, I was covering up a lot of the art. In fact, there were so many boxes that you couldn't see almost the entire left side of the page. And Heather rightfully pointed out that, like, this is a lot, and we kind of cover it over here on the credits page. So why don't we remove some of that stuff? And it's so much better. It's so much more open. You get to see a lot more of the crowd here that surrounds Bix and Diego. And we do get a couple little tidbits. We are reminded that it's Bix's birthday, which is a day that he likes to forget because it's when he found out that his brother was a no-good Nick, and that he was actually, despite being a good mentor and raising Bix after their parents died, he was actually a criminal and part of a criminal enterprise, and also an occultist trying to raise a demon to help them take over the town. So that wasn't a great day, and he's having to relive that now, that somebody's using his brother's daggers from his brother's cult to murder people in the mayor's campaign. So not going great. Diego, of course, being Diego, tries to fill the gap of nobody talking and starts just blathering, because that's what Diego does. And of course, Bix is trying to assess what's happening here and figure out his next move. So what we're doing here on this second page is really getting to understand the dynamic of between Bix and Diego. Bix is a very stoic, non-talkative, kind of old school tough guy, and Diego is a very energetic, outgoing, chatty guy who wants to be friends with everybody. And he's been trying to get Bix to open up and be more sociable throughout this entire thing and talk. Diego's gotten a couple whiffs of what's going on with Bix, but still doesn't really know what's going on inside his head with his brother and his issues. And so here we kind of reflect that, in that Bix is using Diego as a decoy to try to get the attention of the thugs who have tied them up. And so he's trying to get him to talk. And Diego says, "Come on, man, I've been trying to get you to talk all night, and now that we can't talk, you want to talk." But it turns out it's just a diversion, and Bix uses the distraction to get the guy in close and be able to headbutt him, and then they're going to try to escape. So we're off and running with a little bit of action here, which is exciting. We've had a couple pieces of action in the story so far, but this is the first kind of knockdown, drag out fight that we get, and I love what's going on here. Gonzalo does some really good acting. You can see a nice reaction in this Solomon Grundy type character thug up here in the top left, and down in the bottom panel when the werewolf and the fishman get smacked in the face too. Here we continue the action. And for those of you who don't know, if you haven't read any of my behind the scenes material before, Gonzalo, the artist prior to becoming a cartoonist, was an architect. And I think he's really, really good at setting things inside of a space. He understands spatial relationship between people. He understands scale and scope. He also, you can see some nice little details of the warehouse here, the rafters up above Diego in the top here. And it makes the world feel a little bit more real, which I think is adds some really nice detail to it. We get into a fight here. We've got Diego getting tackled by the harpy. Bix is getting surrounded and mobbed by all the creatures here. Um, what I also want to point out is some of the coloring from Arthur here. He gives a lot of nice texture in the background. You can see it looks like maybe a kind of a painterly effect where either you drag the brush or a sponge and kind of drag it on the background. It gives it some nice texture. It feels a little liquefied almost, which is kind of nice. You don't really register it, which is also the nice thing. So it gives it some tooth, it gives it some texture, but doesn't really hit you over the head with it. One of the nicest compliments I got when I share this with some other creators, Carl Kiesel, the wonderful writer and inker who used to work at Marvel and at DC and now does Impossible Jones. He said that we've developed a nice house style, which I have to agree with. I think the marriage of what Arthur does with the colors, with the line work of Gonzalo, is pretty unique, and I take a little bit of pride in that we have this kind of um, style that not only looks great but is, I think, a little unique. So I love that about it. One other little thing that I'd like to point out is I do the lettering, but I'm also the writer, so that gives me one little extra time or a little bit of time to tweak things. And as I'm lettering, sometimes I'll go through and change the dialogue, change the sound effects. And in this case, in this bottom left panel here, I added a little hiss to the vampire, the Victorian era vampire lady, and also with the zombie down in the bottom right who's trying to bite Bix. It just says nom 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 because I thought that'd be kind of cute and fun. Um, if you're feeling a little saucy when you're doing your lettering, you can put in little fun things like that. I think it matches the tone of the book, and it makes it fun for me too. Rather than just going in and copying and pasting and then arranging the letters, it allows me to engage with the material again for like the fifth or sixth time. Because I go through several iterations on the script, I go through several proofreading rounds. And I like to keep it fresh and keep trying to add a little thing to make the enjoyment for you guys a little bit more. Now, one behind the scenes things that we also talk about in the process doc is that this whole flow used to be much shorter. The fight used to be like one page, and then we had this really dramatic um, kind of mist come in with the page turn that we're about to have, and the next page used to be on this page. And Heather pointed out that it would be much more effective, in comics, having that page turn be the big reveal. So going from an odd even, or I'm sorry, odd even, an odd numbered page on the right, and then turning to the even page and having that be the big reveal is one of the magical things in comics. So she pointed out, like, maybe we could do that for the reveal of the council that we're about to get. And so I reworked this fight so that it would kind of preview a little bit of what's going to happen at the end of this issue when Diego gets a little fed up with Bix, and uh, so they're bickering here a little bit on this right hand page, and then we get the stop senseless cease this senseless, I can't speak, cease this senseless rampage, so that we get the nice page turn and we end up here meeting the Council Macabre, which is who had them kidnapped at the end of last issue. This page, we get to do a little bit of world building here, which is a lot of fun, creating the underworld of Harbor City for me. So here we get to meet the head of the Council Macabre, and also uh, figure out or introduce to the Council Macabre just as a concept. So we've got a vampire who we'll meet in a second. We've got Vinny Two Fingers, who's the lieutenant of the Il Cosa Muerta, the undead mafia. Majestico, who, if you remember, is who Bix and Diego have been looking for. He's a mystic who works in town. They went and visited his shop, but he wasn't there. So they've been looking for him, and that's why they ended up getting kidnapped. And then we've got Logan Ventura, who's that werewolf in the back wearing uh, a smart looking suit and also an eye patch. And I kind of want to know what his story is. I think after Gonzalo drew him, I found him very intriguing, and I want to come up with something else to use him for in the future. But we'll get to that at another time. So here we find out that we do find Majestico. We find also that all the monsters in town, whether they're legitimately nice business people or just regular citizens that happen to be monsters, or if they are criminals like some of these folks, they've all banded together uh, to kind of push back against the mayor and his new policy, and just kind of pointing out that, hey, everyone's a person here, no matter what, and they would like him. The monsters want Bix to solve this crime just so they can kind of get the mayor and everybody off their back. Turns out that Majestico, the person they've been looking for, is under the protection of the council, and they vouch for him. And so Bix is a little skeptical of that, of course, because they're all monsters and some of them are criminals. But we find out that Count Vladesco here is kind of a badass and says that they've all promised to be good, and if they're not, he will deal with them, as he says quite harshly. And then to kind of counterbalance that, at the bottom here, we throw in a little joke where he says that none of them would like a demon to be summoned, as will happen if all these murders continue, because they are a capricious and devious lot. And then somebody in the background says, "Hey, I'm right here, man." And Count Vlad kind of drops character and says, "Oh, shit. Sorry, my bad, Frank." Um, this whole scene here on the right hand side of the page where they take off their bindings, get their guns back, and leave, kind of embodies what I've been trying to do with Bixby Grant, which is the marriage of the noir detective and the supernatural, and that you always get the detective who gets kidnapped either by a bad guy or someone involved who wants them to either solve the case for their reasons, or tell them not to solve it for some other reason. Um, and that's just kind of a trope that happens in all of detective fiction. And so we get a little bit of that here. We also, of course, are seeing a little bit of the underworld. We're starting to build out the world, a hint at a larger monster civilization within Harbor City. And yeah, so we're mixing in the noir detective stuff with magic and monsters, literally, because Majestico's using casting a spell on this page. And also, uh, we're getting to see it through Diego's eyes. Like, he's like, wow, there's some cool stuff going on in this city when the chains come off. Bix is unfazed, so we can tell that he's used to this. He's been around it for almost 100 years, and he's kind of a cool customer anyways, but we get to see that this is business as usual for him. All right, now we're getting to the emotional low of the issue, which is to say that um, they're out of leads, right? They questioned a cat burglar. They found and questioned Majestico. They talked to Varvara last issue. That's the 9-year-old witch who channels that demon. And they have nothing to go on. They are no better off than they were 2 issues ago, or so it seems. And also, Bix is tired of Diego sticking his nose in his eyes, and holding him back. So they argue a little bit. We find out that Diego kind of looks up to Bix and likes hanging out with him. And Bix tells him to get lost. So it's a bit of a downer here, and we're not really sure what's going to happen next. But again, as what happens in a lot of detective stories, one of the people that we thought had been cleared as a suspect kind of comes back. And this character, Reginald Van Patten, we met in issue 2. He's the boyfriend of Kat St. Clair, the cat burglar, and he was at her apartment when she denied being involved in this at all. And so he shows up at Bix's office and says that he's not so sure that Kat's telling the truth. And in fact, we get a little bit of background information that he snuck around, and even though she claims to be on the straight and narrow, she still has her her thieving tools. That's not right, burglar's tools. And he also snuck a peek on her phone and found out that she's been talking to people on the campaign manager for the mayor a lot. And we find out that Reginald, he's coming forward because it was exciting dating her, but he doesn't really want anything to do with this. And but he can't have Bix or anybody know that he's the one turned her in because she can make life really uncomfortable for him. He owns a lot of businesses in town, and a lot of his employees are werewolves. So he doesn't want to get them kicked out of the uh, out of town because he's got a personal stake involved. Even though, it's somewhat financial, he does hint at being maybe sort of a good person in that he says werewolves are people too, right? These are people with families and roots, and they don't deserve to just get kicked out of here for be, being who they are. And then, of course, Diego pops up, and he won't leave Bix alone. And so it seems like they do have a new lead, and Diego lets us know that. One of my favorite things recurring, and I don't know if you guys like this or find it amusing, but um, I'm fascinated with the Rat Pack and Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. and all that kind of stuff in the 50s and early 60s. And because Bix is so old and Sinatra is his favorite singer, and because he probably doesn't believe in a god in the usual sense, now that he's an immortal mummy, he's got some questions. And so instead of saying thank God or for the love of God, he says things like Sammy Frank and Dino save me. So like the Rat Pack is his uh, kind of religion in a way. And you'll see that throughout the story where he says, Sweet Sinatra and things like that. Now, now that we've got our lead, we're heading into kind of the crux of this story. So they are wanted men, and in order to move the plot forward, I needed to keep Diego in it because he's necessary for what's going to happen in issue 5 and 6, as you'll see. And I'm not going to spoil it, but I needed to come up with a way to keep him in the story here, because Bix really doesn't want him along, but he kind of needs him, right? So because they're both wanted, they can't be driving around. They'll get picked up by the cops as they almost did last issue, and they can't just waltz through the front door of the campaign headquarters because, again, they're wanted men, and they'll just get uh, picked up either by the cops or by private muscle or what have you. So Bix needs Diego to fly him around because they won't get caught, and they can sneak a peek at an upper floor of the campaign headquarters rather. So they do fly up here, and we find out that Kat St. Clair had been lying. She's working with the campaign manager. Something sketchy is going on. Um, just as an aside here, as a letterer, I had a lot of fun adding the little coos to the pigeons and the flap, 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 flaps. It was a fun little design exercise. I know it sounds a little geeky and is not going to be up everybody's alley in terms of what they like to do, but it was kind of fun. Like I said, you got to keep yourself entertained while you're in the middle of lettering an issue of comics. So now we do find out that Kat and the campaign manager, they in fact possess the set of 5 daggers, and there's only one left. There's been 4 murders, as we've known from previous issues, and they're heading down to the campaign rally. And now we use this second panel here for Diego and Bix to give us a little bit of exposition. So they're pointing out the fact that that's the knife. Something's going on. Bix thinks there's something bigger, and they need to get down to that rally. So they fly off to that. We also get another little bit of back and forth with them, where we can tell again that Bix just really wishes he didn't have to have Diego along. And also, I would like to point out the use of the word horse hockey, which I love as an old-timey kind of mid 20th century non-swear word for shit. Um, so then we get down to the rally and things are about to escalate, right? So they get down there. Bix knows where they're going. We don't know how he knows, but there's this weird side entrance into town hall that they need to go to. And then some of the mayor's constituents here uh, notice them and want to bum rush them. So some of that hatred that they're stirring up at this campaign has reflected on these folks, and they want a piece of Diego and Bix. And here's where we get one of my favorite scenes in this issue, which is Bix is ready to go mano a mano with everybody. And the crowd is all riled up and they're like, we're not scared of you. Yeah, we can take you down. And Diego, being a people person and not prone to violence, steps in and we get what somebody on a podcast that I interviewed called the To Kill a Mockingbird moment, which I love. It totally is. And I did not think of that, but it's like that scene where Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird is like, hey, you and he does pretty much the same thing. He's like, I know you. You work over at Karloff's bar, right? He's like, I worked there for a couple months, remember? It's like, oh yeah. And you work at you're a security guard. I deliver you a pizza. And Bix, of course, loves this because he can use it as a distraction to leave. And we have this, but are still having a nice moment here where we realize, hey, these might be monsters and these might be humans, but we're all just people, really. And can't we all just, continue to live our lives together? And they have been. Um, Unfortunately, Bix kind of ruins that moment because he sneaks away and somebody in the crowd notices that. And so they think it was all just a ruse and that Diego was trying to trick them when in fact he was being legitimate. Um, the other thing going on here is that Bix clearly knows how to get into this secret entrance. Now, why does he know that? And where does this go? He also tries to close the doors before Diego gets in, and this is where things really come to a head, right? So Diego gets in here, the crowd is left outside banging on the door, and Diego is fed up. He's been ditched twice. He feels like he's been used by Bix, and he's so tired of his baloney. Um, and now he's like, look, I've been nice, and that's got me nowhere. We're stuck here. And again, Bix knows this place. He knows if you turn that candlestick, you're gonna get the secret staircase though, which how awesome is a secret staircase. I love having these little things. It's a combination of stuff that I love, right? So it's like mystery stuff with an adventure stuff, and you've got a secret staircase and a cult and monsters and detectives, and it's all kind of mashed up, which is just that's the whole point of Bixby Grant on a larger scale, and it's just a lot of fun for me to write all these things. And so they put aside their conversation or their argument for a moment because Diego is also kind of taken aback at all the stuff that's going on as they literally descend into the underworld beneath Harbor City. And I love this page here on the right where we have these giant doors to some secret chamber. We've got the cult members and we've got some torches. And I love the little details that Gonzalo put on the door. You've got the detail work around the edges. You've got the daggers. You've got the bricks. You've got the beams on the ceiling. It's all just so nice and really builds a nice little lived-in world that clearly has been here for a while. One of the other elements I love, and I'm sure he didn't mean it this way, but this goblin here in the middle panel with his arms crossed, wearing a turtleneck and jacket, I became obsessed with this guy, and so much so that I even ended up making a sticker as one of the stretch rewards for the well-dressed goblin gentlemen's club. And so we're heading now into this secret layer, and we're now finally at the big reveal, which is Bix knows this place because it's his brother's cult's headquarters, and he's had his head so far up his own keister because of all his emotions and because of all the things that Mo and Diego have been trying to tell him that he didn't even think to come here earlier. Um, but now they're here, and the cult has been started again. And we, as the readers, don't know. We can't see who these people are. And Bix and Diego don't give us a hint yet. So that's the big cliffhanger here. But it's also a cliffhanger emotionally because Bix's worst fear has come to pass. Someone has, and is it his brother who he thought was dead for the last 100 years? Is it somebody else who's resurrected this cult? And why are they doing it? So that's the big cliffhanger here, and we're going to get to that next issue. So bump, bump, bump. Um, Yeah. So, and we are, just as a reminder, on the precipice of like all hell breaking loose, right? We just got one more dagger to be used, one more murder, and it, it, they're going to summon a demon, and bad stuff is going to happen. So that's the main issue. The main part of the issue. Um, what we have next here, we're going to get into Zombie Town, but before that, we've got the separator with roll call. And I'm honestly running out of room to list all the wonderful people who've been backing the book. Thanks to each and every one of you who is watching this, because you are a backer, and I cannot stress enough how much we appreciate you guys backing and supporting this book. We've got 2 full pages of people. I had to make the text even smaller this time and add an extra column because there's so many people. But let's get into Zombie Town, shall we? For those of you who don't remember, this is the story of Maritza Ramirez. She's a detective on the Harbor City Police Department, and who her father was Jorge Ramirez, a beloved police captain who went missing 20 years ago. This story, just conceptually, was a way to kind of give you guys, the readers, another glimpse into what else goes on in Harbor Town. Just kind of start to build the world out a little bit more without Bix, with a supporting character. We first met Maritza in Wolf She Cried, which was the first 72-page original graphic novel that we started, the very first Bixby Grant adventure back in 2022. So I pulled that character out, gave her a backstory, and that is what's going on here. She's been investigating on her own time the disappearance of her father. I mean, it was her dad. It was her idol. It's the reason that she became a cop. And she finally, after many years of not having any leads, got a fresh lead, and that led her into Zombie Town, which is a 5 or so square block section of Harbor City that many, many years ago had a zombie outbreak. And because this is such a corrupt and lousy town, the whoever was in charge at that time decided not to deal with it and just wall it off. So there's been this section of town that's just been zombies for 30 years, and nobody goes in there. But Maritza had to, because her father was last seen entering there the night that he disappeared. And now, again, we're at the 4th chapter of this 6-parter, so we're starting to get some answers. We're starting to see who our big bad is. It's this man, Don Scarpino. And before we get into the story, I'd like to talk about Gonzalo Ruggieri, who is the artist on this. He does the pencils, he does the inks, he does the washes, he does the colors. He even does some hand lettering in some places, which we'll point out. It's a very different style from what we have in the main story, the main big story, and that was on purpose. I wanted to show that Harbor City mysteries, whether it's Bix or otherwise, can have different tones. I think all of our favorite comic characters, whether it's Batman, Spider-Man, the Shadow, or anybody, can be treated in different ways and still feel true to the character and to the climate or the environment in which they live. So this one is a little spookier and a little creepier because it's zombies and because it takes place at night and it's a mystery, which has had it's kind of been a cloud over Maritza her entire life since she was a little kid. And I thought that Gonzalo's work really was well suited to this. I found him on Kickstarter actually a few years ago. I backed a sketchbook of his, started following him on socials, and hit him up a couple years ago and see if he wanted to do it. And here we are. And I'm so glad that he was willing to work with us. So here we are. Maritza is now in the midst of Zombie Town. She's gotten to Il Cosa Morta's headquarters and she's confronting Don Scarpino. Now, Don Scarpino is the son of the original Don Scarpino from the 1930s and 40s. He became a zombie in the 70s. And for some reason, everybody in the Scarpino family, when they get bit by a zombie, maintain their intelligence. And they're not sure why. So we've got mostly your typical dumb, slow zombies. But then everyone in the Scarpino family, something about their DNA, they keep their marbles, as he says. Um, so he's the head and it's the perfect place to keep the headquarters to the mafia because no one's going to come in when you've got an entire horde of zombies protecting your building, right? Unless you're Maritza and you snuck in through the sewer and are wearing a suit that protects your smell from zombies so they can't uh, detect you if you're very careful. Now, if you remember last issue, though, she fell through the ceiling on one of these floors and her suit is now damaged, so it's not really going to help. So here, as she's starting to talk to Don Scarpino, she ends up taking off the helmet. Um, and already, Scarpino admits that that he knows her father. And we start to get a little bit of back and forth with them, and then even he provides a recorded conversation that he made with her father many years ago, and we go into a flashback here. And I think that Gonzalo does a really nice job of palette change here, so that it's kind of you can see it's got a much more pinkish kind of uh, lens color over the lens, so to speak. And that's how we know that we're in the past. You can see that Don Scarpino is a little younger. Maybe he's not a zombie yet, because he doesn't look quite as as gray. He still has a nose and some other details here. And this is where Captain Ramirez is making a deal with the devil. So Mari's mom, who's the wife of Captain Ramirez, her big project is creating a community center, which is going to help hundreds and maybe thousands of people who need clothing and food and housing and other services that they can't get elsewhere. And in order to do that, they need the unions to help them, and they're refusing to play ball. And the only way that he can get this done is by getting Don Scarpino to give him the thumbs up and to tell the unions to do it. So he then uses this as leverage to get the captain of the police, a captain in the police, to look the other way on some sort of shipment that's coming into the harbor. And he doesn't go for it right away, but he knows that this is the only way he can get the unions to start building the community center. So he says, "That's fine. I'll look the other way when it comes in, but I'm still going to come after it and after you." So they make the deal, and Mari now can't believe it, right? So she's in a little bit of denial. She held her father on a bit of a pedestal. So did the rest of the town. And as far as the rest of Harbor City knows, this never happened. But Scarpino had recorded this, probably to use as blackmail if he ever needed it. And you can tell when it was recorded because this tape recorder is about 25 years old. So Scarpino says out loud what Mari's kind of thinking here, which is it's not easy to learn that her father wasn't the saint that everybody thought. Now, I talk a little bit about this in the process PDF, but originally this whole issue was a lot more talky and them sitting around talking too much, and it was a little boring. And Heather, the editor, Heather Antos, pointed out that I had made, up until this point, Maritza, had a lot of agency. She was a woman who gets shit done. She was a woman who knows what she wants, isn't afraid to go in the sewer and fight a giant rat and go through a horde of zombies to try and find out what happened to her father. And instead, this time, what I had in the original script was her kind of not being true to that character anymore. So we reworked 6 out of 8 of the pages, so that starting right here, she grabs that recorder, shoots the Don, and books it. So she's kind of taking that responsibility or that agency back and being much more true to her character. Instead of chatting and whining and talking through the whole issue, they're now in the midst of a chase. Here on this page in the top left is a great example of some of the hand lettering that Gonzalo does. The bang, bang, bang. I mean, it's so large and it's echoing throughout the hallways, chasing her down the hall as she's looking for the staircase to get out of here. And I love this pose right here in the middle here where he says, "We ain't done yet, Toots." I love that he calls her Toots because he's a jerk. And literally from the past, his opinions about women are rooted about 50 years ago. Kind of looks down on them. He's a bit of a misogynist. You can see the other thing that I love that Gonzalo did was for his costume, he's wearing this really ugly 70s era disco suit with the wide lapels, bright yellow color, and the red shirt underneath it. You can see he's got a little blood up on his shoulder. So again, because he's kind of that hybrid zombie, he's still a little human, maybe. We don't really know what's going on. Again, a hint at something else that we can do with this character. There's some sort of backstory we can explore down the road, and that kind of excites me as the writer, which was something that kind of was just happenstance. It came out of what Gonzalo put on the page, and that's some of the exciting stuff that comes out of collaboration with the team. So here we get, Mari guesses that the tape recorder was for blackmail purposes and that her father came back down here after Don Scarpino tried to blackmail him. And so he's kicking down doors. This is always the best way to do exposition in comics, I feel like, is during a fight or during some sort of action sequence, because you want to dress it up. It's a visual medium. You can't just, it's hard for even the best artist to make sitting at a table talking all that interesting. Occasionally it can be done, but not very often. And it's also, why not throw some action in it? That's why we're here, right? So he's kicking open doors. They're having the conversation. He can't quite find her. This little piece right here with the sniff sniff, I thought was really great. That was Heather's suggestion, is he can't find her, but zombies, as we've pointed out in earlier issues, can sense human life from smell, right? They can't see, but they can hear and they can smell. So he can't see her right now because she's not where he's looking. So he sniffs to try and find her. And I thought that was a really great little note from Heather, and we ended up putting it in. She presents herself, and we have our final showdown here. And we're getting really to the kind of climax of this issue, which is he admits out loud that he had her father killed right in front of him, like right over there, right in this room. And she reveals that she recorded him not only taping over his blackmail recording of their previous conversation, but now has his confession on tape. And he gets this horrible, creepy grin on his face and reveals another great page turn because he says, "You ain't going no place. Ain't that right, Jorge?" Which is, of course, her father's name. And then we get the big page reveal here where I think you kind of knew this was going to happen. Maritza maybe knew this was going to happen. She had to have known that this was a possibility, that her father was either dead or possibly turned into a zombie. But this is where you start tugging at the heartstrings, and we find out that her father is in fact still around, but not really. And so she's shocked. We've got the zombie, her father, lunging toward her, and Scarpino jokes that it's a daddy-daughter reunion. So that's our big emotional and cliffhanger, but also a physical one because he's kind of lunging at her. Is he going to attack her? What's going to happen next? And how is she going to react? Like I said before, she's a very strong woman, full of grit, and but this is her father, and she just found out he's a zombie. So what's going to happen? And for that, you'll have to come back for next issue. One little thing that I do want to point out is from a lettering standpoint, originally in the script, I had Jorge, her father, zombie Captain Ramirez here, making zombie noises in a speech balloon. But as I was lettering it, I thought it'd be more interesting and more fun, and also kind of evocative of the moment if I had it as a large sound effect running through the background. It's kind of haunting and overtaking her entire world. I know that's a little conceptual, but I kind of like it. And I kind of like the way the page turned out as a result of that. So that's about it. I hope this was insightful and fun for you guys. We do get here to the letters page, which I hope you guys enjoy. I loved letters pages. It was in comics when I was growing up. I wanted to do it in these comics. It's exclusive to the single issues that are available through Kickstarter, so you won't get this in the collections. And if you haven't already, send me a letter for the next one. We're going to be accepting letters and questions for the next letters page pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that. And you can do that by signing up for my newsletter. If you go to bixbygrant.com or find me on Substack, we also do give away a hardcover edition of Bixby Grant Wolf She Cried once a month to one randomly selected newsletter subscriber. We've got about 400 people on there already. I do some behind the scenes stuff on there. I do some works in progress. I give you some advanced previews that you won't get elsewhere. So, yeah, get on there and stay up to date on all things Bixby Grant. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you again so much for backing us. This is, of course, a stretch goal, which means that we went way past our goal, which is exciting. And I hope you'll stick around for the future ones too. Thanks.